Welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I'd love to jump into our first topic that you've offered me. So, my question for you is, how has letting go of career and life expectations helped you to build a successful career so far?
So I think overall my career trajectory has shifted like so many times because I haven't held on to like those expectations too much. So for some context, when I was probably 15, 16, I was studying I was really into programming, I was studying computer science, I was loving it.
Hmm.
I watched The Internship, the film, if you've not seen it. Great film, go watch it. Um, and I saw it and I was like, oh my God, I want to go and I want to work for Google or like another one of these big tech companies. And I want to move to San Francisco and I want to do all this. Um, and then as I went, that was kind of my plan up until about my second year of university. And then um, I discovered aerospace. Um,
Mm.
and so that kind of changed how I was looked at that. And I realized actually maybe I can have a different kind of impact and a better impact through aerospace. So that changed again. Um, and then I had an internship for an Earth observation company. And the following year, I was looking for other internships. I had interviews lined up at some big tech companies. And I was still interested in aerospace, but I just really couldn't find something that suited me. So I was like, okay, let's go into big tech. That's what you wanted for years. Let's try that again. Um, and I tried it again, and COVID hit. And so all my interviews got cancelled. And I ended up back at the same Earth observation company I was at the year before. So it was a nice reminder that like that was out there and that was something I did want to pursue. And it's kind of my backup option. Like in all honesty, it was a great company, but it was small and there wasn't loads of opportunity for growth. So it wasn't going to be my, like end of end goal to like go work there or anything.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that's helped me see the aerospace again. And then fast forward a year, I found the Brooke Owens Fellowship, which I found my company that I'm working for through. And now I'm back in San Francisco, kind of close to my dream that I had when I was 16, working for a space tech company. Um, but it's a completely different world I'm in and a like much better fit for me. And I think those different kind of hurdles that I faced, getting to here have really shown me like what I value in my career and like yeah, just how good it is to see where your career takes you and like try things, see if you like it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that reminds me of a quote that I don't recall who said this, but it's something along the lines of writing your goals down in pen, but the journey there in pencil. So to not hold on so vigorously onto the process or the journey because you just don't know what sort of twists and turns it will take. But it's so interesting and just so fascinating that you had this idea in your head of living and working in San Francisco as a foreign national in technology and that you had this interest in aerospace and it's just really manifested in the most special way. What I'd love to follow up with is to learn more about your process or the process you think you will have of grieving timelines that you may have created in your head, but ones that did not manifest. So, as we look to other facets of our lives beyond just work, things such as friendship, relationships, homes, where we live, time management, fun, trips we want to take, money we want to make, any aspect of life, or even wanting to be a senior engineer or a vice president by a certain time. What is that process you think you may have of grieving something that doesn't show up in the time that you think you want it to show up?
Yeah, so I've definitely had a bit of experience with this. I would say I have my whole process down and like to a T. But going back to with the Brooke Owens Fellowship, as you know, I was meant to do my internship in the US. And due to COVID and visa issues, I ended up doing that in France. And that was kind of one of those things where like, okay, I was finally going to get to San Francisco. I was going to achieve that dream that I'd been kind of looking for you know what, 6 years by that point. And realizing that I couldn't go a month before I was meant to go was like quite heartbreaking at the time. But
Yeah,
I've had such
absolutely.
an amazing time since then, and I think
Hmm.
that showed me so much how to deal with these things a lot better, and how to just like sometimes you just gotta accept that. Because I think at that point I felt that, you know, immediate heartbreak of like, okay, well that's not happening. But I'm very much one to I would say like to look on the positives. Um, so I was saying, okay, well, I'm not going to San Francisco, but I get to go to France. Like that's an amazing opportunity. Like that's something that you can't turn down, and going to be so amazing. And now, like, thinking about it now, yeah, thinking about it now, I think I learned so much from that, and about like being independent, and about um setting up a life for myself that I then took and I could properly put into place when I got to San Francisco. So I think my experience here has been so much better for the fact that like I had that way, and I had that time to kind of think about what I wanted, and like see how I could have done better and worse. And it was a little like trial run basically. Um and I've definitely had similar things happen, and uh, personal life as well as professional life, and like COVID messed up my graduation, so I had that. I ended up not getting a graduation at all, and
Yeah.
again you see that major immediate heartbreak. But
Hmm.
um when I was going to have my rescheduled graduation, I was in France. So again, it's like there's opportunities out there that are better, or maybe were just more right for you at the time. And I think if you've not achieved those things at the time, it's because they're not for you at that time.
Hmm.
Is actually a really great phrase. I think it's the only time ever one for like fate or um anything like that. But it's a Scottish phrase, at least I think it's Scottish, that's like what's for you will not go by you.
Mm, yeah.
So yeah, if it's like if it's meant to be, if that role is for you, if that person is for you, if that, you know, opportunity is for you, it won't go by you. It just means something else is around the corner that's waiting. Which I think maybe 6 years ago I would have cringed at, but now I'm a firm believer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on navigating getting hung up on why something may not be for you, even if you really, really want it to, I think what my process has been is simply to open up Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts and to search for words like grief plus what you're grieving or mourning or are sad about. And that gives you access to so many experts who are then personally in your ear walking you through whatever it is that you are going through. I know I remember searching sad about graduation in 2020 because I didn't have it in 2020. And to listen to all of these podcasts on my little pandemic walks was so helpful because it gave me access to so many experts I didn't even know who had research and opinions about how to navigate it best. And so I think for me, when quotes don't cut it, journaling doesn't cut it, talking to my family or friends doesn't cut it. I think listening to experts and just learning how to sit with that grief and heartbreak to first be able to acknowledge it, I think has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I should use that.
Yes, to sit with just the sadness and to say like, hey, this sucks, and to let it suck for as long as you need it to suck before it can get better so that um we don't lean into toxic positivity
Yeah.
for milestones in our life that just are seeming to pass some of us by because of the way um, the world is now post pandemic. So, what I was curious about is in your move to France and then San Francisco, how have you worked on becoming comfortable outside of your comfort zone?
So again, this is something I'm still like working on, but I think doing things in baby steps, or just like really listening to yourself. And sometimes, you don't have the energy to be outside your comfort zone, and that's fine. Um, so yeah, for me coming to I'd say going to France was probably more outside my comfort zone with the language barrier and things. That initial like shock of like actually getting there. You've done the big bit. And I think that's always great when you can take like a big chunk out of that. And like if it's like doing a speech or something, like actually writing the speech first, that's your first big chunk, like your first big barrier. And then once you're out of that, I find myself just, yeah, like really listening to myself and also taking small steps. So one thing I was like really self-conscious about was, going for dinner by myself, or like doing
Yeah, that can be a
by
big
myself.
one.
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
really big one for a lot of people. And actually, interestingly, in France, it's so much more common than it is in the UK and in the US. So that was actually really interesting and like eye-opening to see that like you weren't the only person in the restaurant by yourself. Um, but I took in steps. I started exploring the city by myself first, and then I would maybe go to a museum, or I would go um into an art gallery, or like some of the attractions where it's maybe more of an enclosed space. There's more groups, people are with families. Um, and then I started to actually like, yeah, go and get food by myself and explore those things. And I think, yeah, overall it got easier. There was times you would, "Oh, I just don't want to do it," and that's fine. You don't do it. You order in some food and you deal with the fact that you're ordering some takeaway in France and you've got all the food, nicest food around you. That's fine. You can just listen to yourself. Um, but yeah, I think those baby steps really help. And then after the fact, reflecting on how that experience like impacted you, what you learned from it, and like how it changed your perspective and things. I'm not saying you need to, every single time you go out for dinner by yourself, you need to do that. But recently I was kind of looking back on my time in France and how I feel now, and I think it's so different for that experience. So making sure you actually do have that reflection is good. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And so really leaning into those feelings of discomfort, nervousness, passing anxiousness, and asking it, oh, what are you trying to tell me? What is this teaching me? What's
For sure.
coming up with me? Let's first look at it. So do the brave thing of looking at it and acknowledging it. And then to choose to reflect on it is also such a brave act, because not only are you looking at it in the face, but you're saying, well, how can I grow from this? And so I guess as a follow-up, what I'd love to know is overall your general advice on using fear or perhaps weaknesses for your self improvement. So maybe beyond journaling, ways in which those two things have shown up in stretching you since your move to France and then the US.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, the biggest fear, I always is just social interactions in that case. But actually going out of France and the US for a second, while I was in university, I've always loved public speaking, like always loved it. Um, I speak incredibly fast. I have an accent that people struggle with. And that especially manifests public speaking. So that was something that I knew I really wanted to do, especially early in university. I realized in high school I maybe hadn't utilized the opportunities I had to do those things. And I was really disappointed about that because I knew I would have loved it. So I forced myself to join the Women in STEM Society, eventually becoming president of that. And as a president, I had to, host many, many events and like do intros and everything. And a lot of it ended up over Zoom, which actually was a super good way to like practice those skills without having people in the room with you. Like it's a bit more terrifying. But again, I feel like my advice over and over again is just like just do it, which is harder. Like it's easier said than done. But for me, I found that was like definitely one of my weaknesses. Was just like not being a great public speaker, but also loving it, which is I think quite rare. And doing that over and over again, I've seen my skills improve so much, my confidence improve so much. Um, I still speak fast, I still have my accent, but it's accepting that those things are part of me, which I yeah, I obviously do still have a little bit of those insecurities, as I said to you before the podcast. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think those things have made me so much better, and like the opportunities forcing myself to do that has opened up. Have been like amazing. Like I really credit the Women in STEM Society for being a big part in like why I got the Brooke Owens Fellowship and why I'm where I am today, getting into space. So that opportunity, had I not done it because I was scared of public speaking, um, like I think that would have massively impacted my career. So yeah, I don't know if I have like specific advice to like give people away, but just like from my experiences, I think if there's something you want to do and there is fear there, or there is like you're not great at it, it's fine to do things that you're not great at. And that's something I have struggled with, like being, a high achiever in high school. I think a lot of people go to university, they see um that they're not the smartest person in the room anymore, or that the
Mhm.
top five in the room anymore, and that's really, really uncomfortable and scary. So I think that showed me that like you can do things that you're not great at, and it's still something I am not amazing at doing. Like I still need to push myself to do that more. But yeah, it has shown me that how valuable that can be and how much it can help you achieve. Yeah.
Yeah, and for the love of that activity to really outweigh the insecurity you may have. And so what I love about what you said is first acknowledging that weakness and acknowledging that insecurity and listening to that voice inside our head that says, I don't feel terribly good at this. But then to listen to that other voice as well that says, oh, but I love this and I want to continue going, and to let that second voice overpower the other one. I think that's, again, so fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing. And that thought process is so powerful, and breaking that down, because a lot of times we take a lot of actions and we say yes to things even when they scare us. But I love sort of pulling the curtain back a little bit on all of these scary things that you've done and have been able to do.
Yeah, I'm glad you could share. Actually one little like extra tidbit on that was I joined the Women's STEM Society in my second year. In my third year, um, they were trying to find somebody to run for president. And at the end, I was like, oh, I would love to do this. I would love it. But I don't feel ready. Um, but you know what, this might be my only opportunity. There's no one else running. This might be like a safe bet. Why don't I do it now when I know I'm not gonna have somebody running against me? I'm not gonna like, have that fear. And then I apply, and it turned out somebody else is running against me. And it's somebody who was more senior on the committee than me previously. Like I thought she would do an amazing job, and I suddenly wanted to pull out because I knew I would fail. And I did. I didn't get to be president that year. And then seeing like just going through with it anyway, and then going again, like applying the next year. And I got in and I was the president, and I can see that like I wasn't ready for that. Um, but I think still putting myself out there and being like, okay, it's fine if you fail. Like nothing, the world's not gonna come like to a stop because you didn't get it to be president. Like you're still in the committee, you can still be involved. Yeah, so it's always valuable to do things that scare you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And I just think that's such a perfect transition for my next topic in question, which is learning how to lead from wherever you are. And so I'd love to know more about how you've learned to lead as a student and a young professional now. And what are some of the challenges you've seen students and young professionals have when it comes to being a leader?
Yeah, so I think specifically as a student, leading is incredibly difficult and complex because you have this thing where you've been elected most likely to a position, so people around you do believe that you are capable of it. But at the same time, they're students, they have a million other priorities. Like it's really hard to know when to have authority over people and like when to pull your rank. Just something I really struggled with.
That's a
Um,
big one. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like being able to like say, actually, you know what, you're not fulfilling your role, and that's fine. Like if you're a student, we understand, but being like, I need to be able to say like, you can't sit here anymore, like you can't do this anymore. Um, And I struggled while there was a case in my society where somebody wasn't pulling their weight, and we had to um ask them to leave. We had to ask them to step down and hold an election for their position. And I was like, I tried to give them a million chances. Like I definitely gave them far too many chances to fix it, because I was like, I'm not like, I'm the same age as you. I'm like, I have no experience in this that's different from you. So why am I like in control here? So it's definitely a really, really difficult thing. But I think remembering that you were elected, people believe in you to do this thing. And also if it's something you're passionate about, I think that's key. Like if you're doing being a leader in anything, you've got to be passionate. If you don't pull that rank and like pull through and like figure out, and it's again easier said than done, if you don't figure out like how you can cope with having that leadership position, then the thing you're super passionate about is not going to be the best it can be. And I think in the end it's going to be like, for me there was definitely like a flip moment where I was like, okay, I want the society to be amazing. It's done so much for me. I want to do the same for everyone else, but I can't do that if I don't like learn how to be a leader.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think definitely I look to my friends and my peers who had been in similar positions, and asked them for advice, and that was super helpful. But again, it's also like a million other challenges that students face. One of my big ones that I found was just like having a lack of credibility with the adults around me, well, not adults, but like more senior people, like professionals,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, was again really hard, because I had credibility with the students because they elected me, but um, going to the university and saying like, hey, I want to do this, or I need your help on this, or like you can improve this, they just didn't want to listen. And we held like diversity and inclusion round table with a bunch of the engineering schools, like school heads. So we had like the School of Engineering, mathematics, physics, everything, all the sort of STEM subjects. And we pulled them together to discuss what the problems there were, how we can improve, all of those things. And at the end, I actually got a really angry email from someone saying, well, who are you um to like tell us we're not doing a good job?
Wow.
And like, who are you, like, and I had to like reference a full report that I had actually written after collecting like loads of data on the students' experience, and be like, this is who I am. Like
Yeah.
I'm representing students here, and the fact that you're like treating me like this is really, really bad.
And
So they
it's
were
really telling, and that
yeah,
pushback is really shocking. Yeah.
yeah. So it's definitely hard to deal with those things. I think in those cases you just gotta find the people that do listen to you. And you're not going to be able to change everyone's minds, and especially when you're a student, you don't have your whole like life to work on those things. So I think figuring out like where you can make the most impact and who strategically can help you the most is so valuable, because we found actually going above that person to the head of the school was so much more valuable than going for to the EDI representative, which is a kind of heartbreaking, but you know, sometimes you gotta be a little bit strategic about how you're doing it. Yeah, so I think as a student, you've got some challenges, but there's definitely ways around it, and I think there's such a big group of people there to help you and support you. Just as long as you're making sure you're not doing it by yourself, then you can find your ways. Yeah.
I think all of that is so important. And what I'd be so curious to know is overall, how can more gender minorities feel empowered in these roles as young professionals and students, perhaps transitioning between university and their first job, or are in those last 2 years of university where they are in those leadership roles?
Yeah, so I love this question, and I've been trying to think of an answer for a while now. Um, I think I think the most important thing is to remember that like your unique experiences, um, and your like opinions, your perspective is super, super valuable. And other people might not see that, but you know it best. And especially like for students coming in, to be able to tell universities like or colleges or wherever you're a student, um, how to like fix things, you are the best person to tell them that. Um, so I think trying to remember those things, like trying to remember that like you are the best person to give that advice. Yeah, I think other than that, I'm really struggling to answer this question, but I think like everyone can do more to support the next generation coming up, like the year after you, or give support. I think it's really important that like we don't just take these leadership roles and then walk away. So I know I personally try to encourage somebody that wasn't too confident about being president to be president, because I could see that like they were going to do an amazing job for the Women's STEM Society. And now it's amazing like seeing how she's done is great. So I think when we walk away from these roles, yeah, we do need to make sure we're still mentoring the people that are coming behind us. And yeah, I don't know, that's not a great answer, but
No, it's a terrific answer. And I think one that folks, again, need in their ear to trust their experiences, and that their unique experiences count. And I know that that's advice that I needed in starting my social media pages, because I would think, well, there's so many people at this university that I'm at. There's so many other gender minorities who are pursuing the degree I'm pursuing at this university. Why do I need to share my journey? What makes my journey special? And to fully ignore my unique experiences was, I think, so unfortunate. And it took people telling me that advice to get more comfortable with sharing my story online. And I think it's something that I still struggle with, in having a consistent and regular cadence of showing up online as a creator, or even assuming that identity. And so, for whatever leadership role people are stepping into at work through employee resource groups, or in their last few years of university as presidents of organizations, I think for them to realize that, again, they are special and unique, and for them to just champion themselves, because who else is? So thank you so much for sharing that. And I'd love to jump into a rapid fire round if you feel ready for it now.
yeah, sure.
Okay, so my first question for you is, what does wellness mean to you?
So I'm not gonna be truthful, I'm not great at like wellness overall. I tend to ignore that a little bit. But to me, wellness is, making sure that every part of your life is making you happy. Um, and not ignoring like when things are not going right, and just saying, but it's fine, it's just my job, or it's just this part of my life, or just this part of your life. I think every single little part of your day is super important to making you be your full self. So yeah, I just think, yeah, focusing on those individual aspects, and like really making sure that they're all supporting you and everything. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I love your transparency, because I'm sure there are folks listening who are curious about your story and your insight, and maybe aren't so great at those practices themselves. And so it's so helpful to hear that from you, but to hear your definition of it alongside that. So thank you. My next question for you is, what does effective leadership mean to you?
Effective leadership to me is leadership that focuses on the people that they're leading at the same level as they focus on the results of whatever you are trying to achieve. Yeah, leave it at that.
Wow, I love that. And so, as you shared how you were still trying to bring more wellness practices into your life, I'm curious about your current morning and or night routine, and what you do when you feel like you've fallen off track.
Yeah, so I am actually like a super routine person. Like I love my routines. They're just not um that mature. So um my morning is fairly simple, just like you're fairly like getting ready, skincare, shower, all that. Not very interesting. But the one thing that I love in the evening is I have a sunset lamp, and I have a little like mood lamp, and my candles in my room. And without fail, every evening I will put all the lights on, set my candles, and make it super cozy and nice. And I sit in bed and I like think about my day, and I like at that moment where like always look up and I'm like, I love this, like this room, this like being in San Francisco, like
Oh,
at that moment where I always have that little like oh, this was awesome. Like sometimes it's this day was
Yeah.
terrible, but that like little minute of reflection, I'm not great at
Yeah.
journaling or anything like that, but that little just like second to like think about your day and then yeah.
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 And just to feel that gratitude and presence in the moment is so cool. Well, thank you for sharing. I was curious if you had anything else to share across any of the topics that we've spoken about today, or just anything else you'd like to add.
No, I don't think so. I think I can talk all day about like the difficulties of moving country and everything and visas and everything that goes with that. So if anybody ever does want to like chat to me about those things, I'm happy to talk to them. Um, but I think that's all my big pieces of advice shared. So
Well, thank you for your time, and I will add your email and contact information in the show notes so people know how to reach you, along with your bio and all the wonderful things you've done. Thank you so, so much for joining me. I'm so grateful for your time.
thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.